Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Today is Wednesday, July 16th, 2025. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Let's do this, man. Yeah. This week on Fade to Black, Monday night, we had Dr. Tracy Finaro with us talking about Gaia Theory. Last night, Scott Wolter was here, Lewis and Clark, and their secret vault. Great conversation. Tonight, it's Preston Dennett. That's right. He's back. And tonight, one of my favorite subjects and his Schoolyard UFOs. That's what we're doing tonight. Tomorrow night, Christopher Jordan is here, and the show is about the citizen scientist who is you. All right, I have one major event coming up. It is the PSI Games, the Psychic Olympics. It's coming up at the end of this month. It is August 1st through the 3rd, 2025 in Charlottesville, Virginia. The Psychic Olympics. There is a promo code in the description below over on our website and throughout social media. It's a Jimmy C PG20. That's right. Discount on your tickets, and I will see you out there in Charlottesville in 2 short weeks. All right. Right before showtime tonight, I'm texting with my dearest and one of my oldest friends, Lisa Reed. Everybody knows Lisa. And she's like, man, when are we going to hang out? When are we going to do this? When are you going to be in town? I said, hey, well, I'm in town now. Where are you? She goes, I'm in Hawaii. I said, well, now who's got the excuse? You're in Hawaii. I'm ready to go right now. Let's go. Well, I can't, and I said, all right, Miss Cosmopolitan, what are you doing in Hawaii? And then she shows me a picture of her mom, who I also know. By the way, her mom, Ginny. Hi, Ginny. She's listening right now. Ginny made me a birthday present. She made me, I don't know if it's crocheted, but an alien Afghan. It's got a giant alien. It's amazing. And I curl up with it every night on my couch. And Ginny is amazing. But Ginny's in the hospital tonight doing what people do at our age, getting a hip replaced. So she's getting ready. I don't know if the operation's already been done at this point or if it's happening now. But Ginny, I hope everything is okay. And you'll be up and hopping here shortly. Lisa, love you, and I'll see you when you get back into town. All right, let's get the show cracking tonight. Preston Dennett, I almost said Preston Dentist. That actually works for me, though. Preston Dennett is with us, old friend of mine. And tonight we're going to be talking about Schoolyard UFO Encounters, cases around schools, in schools, witnessed by students and teachers, and what is actually going on here. The thing is with Preston, he's been investigating UFOs since 1986, right here in Southern California. And he has authored, at this point, I'm going to say over 30 books, hundreds of articles. He has appeared at conferences and radio shows and television all around the world. He's one of not only the most popular, but one of the best researchers in our community. And I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Preston Dennett. There he is right there. Preston, how you doing, my friend? Oh, wait, you've muted yourself. There. You know, the big entrance, and you're muted. Do you like that? Preston Dentist.
Hey, I've been called worse.
Yeah, Preston Dentist. I have no
Works
idea.
For me.
Preston Dentist. That's what came out. Good to see you. Hey, you and I are the same age.
Oh, really?
Have you had a hip replaced yet?
Not yet, but I'm definitely beginning to feel my age.
Yeah. About a year and a half ago, I had this issue with my left hip, and it lasted for a while, about a year. No, it's probably about 2 years ago now. And I wrote it out, and now I'm fine. But I was too scared to go to the doctor. I didn't want to have here you go. Okay, man, you've got to get a hip replacement. I wasn't ready to tap out. You know what I mean? I just was like,
Sure.
I'm not gonna do it. I'm not. It's weird. I'm actually fine. It took about a year of pain, and it was bad. It was bad, but for some reason it's fixed itself, which doesn't normally happen. But knock on wood. I don't have any wood. Oh, my head. Knock on wood that I am fine. But everybody goes through this stuff, right? Knees, right? It's funny. Do you have, and then we're going to move on to Schoolyard UFOs. Do you have body parts that make noise now?
A couple, yeah. I mean,
What's up with that? My knees make noise. They do, man. I admit it. It's like,
yeah, my neck clicks a little bit every now and then, but my skipping days are over. Climbing trees, skiing, all that fun stuff.
Yep. I have a saddlebag on my Harley, right? And it's got these buckles, and you have to bend over and unbuckle. Now, when we were kids, you would squat, do your thing, and I can't do it anymore. I have to do it standing up, and if I'm not around people, I'll squat. But when I get up, I got to go. It's
Yeah.
like what happened to me, man? I used to be so svelte and athletic, but here, yeah, I don't know. It's going to happen eventually. I wanted to ask you this. You've been researching UFOs for a long time now, and I hate to say it, but it's 4 decades, right? That's a long time. How do you feel? What's your take on what we're all going through? That includes myself. What's your take on like hardware flying saucers with rivets, right? And now this interdimensional wormhole thing that we find ourselves in today. We still have the real metallic craft, but there's been a transition. Now, my question is, do you think that it's something that is actually happening, or has it always been this way, and scientifically we understand the phenomena differently, and we're looking at the appearance and disappearance of things in a scientific sense, where that it may have been going on this whole time, or is ET changing its tactics?
Well, yeah, I've been in this field a while, and I think we're definitely have a better grip on what's going on. And I think it's clear that there's a lot more reverse engineered craft out there than we, or certainly I, previously believed. A lot of what people are seeing is definitely our own. I think absolutely these craft that ET have do travel interdimensionally. People have been to other planets and such, and it doesn't take, light years to get there. It's quick. So it's pretty clear that they can travel interdimensionally. I mean, Dolly Safran, my favorite contactee, who
Yep.
Describes this in great detail in one of my books. She calls it a light gate. This is actually what the ETs call. So she doesn't like the term portal or wormhole. Not particularly accurate. But from what I understand, and I see this in many other accounts, that's basically how they travel interstellar distances, as opposed to when they're around here, darting around and going, appearing to defy the laws of physics, which of course they're not. We just don't understand it.
Yeah, we just don't understand it. That's such a good point. And I think there is something else. I remember Nick Redfern. I haven't heard from Nick in a while, by the way. But anyway, probably 10 years ago or more, Nick said something at a conference that stuck with me. And he said, Jimmy, this was on a panel. And he says, you know what I think? My dad said when I was a kid, he said to me, ET has bases right here in our star system. That's what they travel to. They don't travel to Earth. They travel to their bases, and then they travel from their bases to Earth. And that's really easy for them to do. The other stuff happens, and we don't know about it when they travel to their bases. And I stopped. I just, it was kind of a weird thing clicked in my head. That makes a lot of sense. It doesn't explain everything, but it does make some sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I think there's some good reporting on that, particularly on, bases on the far side of the moon. Not that they are active, but I've heard from numerous sources that there's something up there that's certainly not ours. And definitely, I would say we're much more likely to see bases in our solar system rather than here on Earth. But if ETs can travel interstellar distances, easily, they don't really need a base. But until we know, we don't know. I do think that there's absolutely some legitimate cases that talk about this sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think that everything is on the table, and the reason why, Preston, and I get a lot of information from you. If I'm going to deduce something out of the subject, it's that there is a lot of life out there, an infinite amount of life and varieties of civilizations that are going to do things their way. And so the types of ET, the types of craft and species and mindsets and what the attitude is and what are their goals are as varied as our imagination can play. So that I don't think anything is the same, and every thing that we could think is possible is probably happening. I think it's easier to look at it that way than say it's this specific way, it's this specific race, and this is the only way it gets done. Man, I just think this is...
Well, that would make perfect sense. I mean, some are clearly here on tourist type missions.
Sure.
Others are down there, with their little shovels, taking plants and soil samples. Others are picking people up and getting their genetic material. Others are collecting animals. Some, there's, like you said, a wide variety of things going on here. And one thing is absolutely for sure, it's far, far more common than I think even people within the UFO community recognize. Because, I'll tell you why, Jimmy.
Yeah,
I put out this challenge. This is about a year ago. Name any place on this planet, any town, any city. I will find a case there. And I got a big response. I've got a list now of almost 1,000 locations. I've put out, 12 episodes where I explore these locations. And people are giving me these rinky-dink little towns, trying to stump me. No, can't stump me yet.
Yeah.
Batting 100%, UFOs are visiting every single location on this planet.
And why not? If we spin this around, okay, let's flip this the other way and look at what we Earthlings are doing. What are we doing? Every day we're looking for more exoplanets. We're looking for exoplanets that are like Earth, that may be habitable, not only for ET, but for us in the future. We are constantly scanning the skies. We are wondering about life out there in the universe. It is one of the biggest non-trivial questions that exist, period. Well, ET is doing the same thing. That's it. And if if life out there is what I think it is, which is infinite, there's an infinite amount of intelligent civilizations that have located this planet. It's their job. It's our job to find them, right? So that's the case. I don't think that there is any other way to look at it. Everybody that has the ability the technology to find us has found us. That's the only way to look at it.
I bet we're kind of famous or infamous maybe throughout the universe, because let's face it, ETs are telepathic. They're very good at communications. I'm guessing that, Earth is pretty famous throughout the galaxies. A backward planet where people are struggling, but we certainly get a wide variety of humanoid types. Everything from grays to little blue beings to short, hairy little dwarf-like beings, tall whites, mantids. I mean, you name it, human-looking. The variety is unbelievable.
Yeah, and we have Las Vegas. Right? We have Las Vegas. Have you seen, do you watch Resident Alien?
I have not seen the last season, but okay. I watched the first two.
All right, this new season is fantastic. And I don't want this isn't a spoiler, but it is friggin' funny. So they're up in a ship above Earth. They're being held captive and trying to get back to Earth, right? And they make friends with this little gray. And the gray's like, oh, I want to go down to Earth so bad. So they get this little gray to help them escape. Guess what the gray did?
I have no idea.
Went to Caesar's Palace. That's all it wanted to do. And it's in the casino, yanking on a slot machine. It was hilarious. And I've said that jokingly over the years, but it makes a lot of sense. There's things that make this planet, a lot of things that make this planet wonderful. Right? The water, the beaches, the atmosphere, that, it's pretty nice here. When we look at so many other planets, it just, not as fun to hang out. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that doesn't really surprise me, because if you dig deep in this field, you'll see a number of cases where ETs are walking among us. This is what the witnesses swear up and down, or some of these in the schoolyard cases we'll be talking about tonight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think you keep your eyes peeled and look for three things. Do they have a strange appearance? Are their clothes just a little bit off? And are they behaving in a way that's just not quite normal?
Have you had that happen?
To me personally, I've sometimes wondered a few times.
Me too.
I can't say that I've seen anything that was a slam dunk ET, but there's been a few times, I'll be at a convention or something and someone comes up to the table and I'm looking at his eyes and he's very soft spoken. It's just a little bit different. My sister-in-law, Christy, was with me and he went over and talked to her and she turns to me and says, "Did you see this guy?"
Really?
I'm like, yeah. She's like, "I think he was an ET." I'm like, I was wondering, just because he was different.
I mean, you've been to my house and my old house. And I had a dinner party there one night, and at this dinner party was a comedian, famous comedian, right? And we're all sitting around the table telling stories. And it comes up to him, and it's his turn. He goes, "Okay." And I mean, sitting at the table with us was like Steve Murillo was there, Steve,
sure,
Camille, and the Harmons were there. And some other people that so we're all sitting there, and it comes around to the comedian. He goes, "Okay, man. Well, one night I was watching a movie with my girlfriend, and we were eating popcorn, and I turned and looked at her, and she shape-shifted into a reptilian." Right? And you could hear a pin drop, like, "What did you just say?" And he was, this was a serious statement from him. And he goes, then she turned and looked and caught me looking at her, and she went back to normal. And we went back to watching the movie like nothing happened. Wow. And I think this happened. I believe that, this wasn't like some hallucination or made up story. I think it actually happened. I haven't seen anything like that. I don't know if I mean, would you want to have that experience?
Sure. Why not?
Really? Okay. So Dolly walks in the room. You ready, Preston? You can handle that.
Well, I like to think so. I've had a few UFO encounters. You never know how you're going to react until something like this happens to you.
Yeah.
So who knows? But
yeah. I talk a big game. I do. I talk a big game. I don't know if there's something. I just don't know if I can handle, man. I don't know if I could handle Bigfoot face to face. I don't know. I don't know what I would do with ET. I don't know if what would I do if like the Grim Reaper is walking through my living room? You know what I mean? Just like the ultimate paranormal, supernatural experience. If it really happened, how I would handle it. Yeah, I don't know. My favorite. Let's get into these schoolyard UFO cases. When people ask me, okay, so Church, what's your favorite case? And just like you, I get that question a lot. I do. I get it a lot.
Sure.
And you know where I go? I go one of two things, but usually I go Westall 66. And it's not on everybody's mind. It's not like, top tier UFO case that people think about first, and then they go and they research it. You go, man, I didn't know about this case. It's got everything in it, but it's a schoolyard case. And some of the bigger schoolyard cases are some of the most fascinating UFO cases we have. And I think for a lot of us, and this question goes straight back to you, for a lot of us, yeah, it's the UFO side, but it's children. It's the schoolyard aspect of this that just is the cherry on the top, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's something really special about the fact that there are so many cases like this. Children, some people say, oh, they're not great witnesses. I kind of beg to differ, because they're easy to spot if they're lying. They're also really good at not interpreting their experience. They just lay out the facts. They're not overlaying, social beliefs on like, this is an angel, this is a demon. In a lot of these schoolyard cases, these kids are quite young. Primary schools contain half the amount of cases I found. 50% are, elementary age kids. So, but I also want to stick in here that over half of the cases do involve adults. So it's not just kids. But
yeah. No, you're right about that. You're right about that. And in a lot of these cases, the adults are trying to convince themselves of something else, where the kids just stick to the story. Right. And
it's funny because the kids are like, they're looking up, look at this. And the teachers are running around going crazy and trying to bring them back into the school. It's insane.
And trying to rationalize it. Trying to rationalize. Are you sure you saw what you saw? Man, yes. It's you that is questioning yourself, Teach. But yeah, isn't that fascinating where the adults will and I think it's because of kids are okay with fascination and asking questions and wondering and pondering, where adults are trying to protect their psyche.
Yeah, their fragile belief system.
That cognitive dissonance, right?
Exactly.
They don't want to have that cracked open. Is there a similarity that crosses over in these cases?
100%. Yeah, I started to notice a few things right off the bat. These cases are different from anything that's out there in the UFO literature. The average sighting is an anomalous light at night. Maybe 3-4 people see it. It lasts a couple of minutes and off it goes. This is the complete other end of the spectrum. These are by and large daylight sightings, 90%, 95 even. And not only that, they're very low level. I'm talking maybe 100 feet, 200 feet. That would be on the upper end. There's a few higher than that. 1/3, this really surprised me, 1/3 of the cases involve actual landings or humanoids or both, which is a lot. These are long-lasting cases. These are cases where the UFOs not only just appear over the school perhaps, but will move around, put on a display. so to speak. So there's a lot going on here that differentiates them from any other type of sighting out there.
Yeah, you're right. And you brought up a good point. You kind of whizzed past it. Nighttime sightings, typically you're alone or one or two people as witnesses, typically, right? Schoolyard sightings, you've got hundreds of witnesses. That's a whole nother thing. It's daylight with hundreds of witnesses. That's a huge point to lay out there for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, and I looked to see sporting events. You know, there's a lot of sporting events out there. And I found some cases, 10, 20. Could probably dig deeper and find 30. You know, music events, concerts. There's a few out there too.
Drive-in theaters.
That was very close to the same thing. We did a whole show on that.
We did.
That's at night too. And I didn't find nearly the number of landings or humanoids. I think these cases with kids is super interesting because this is a very clever, I think, method that the ETs are using to sort of introduce all humanity to their presence in a way that slides under the radar, but is very effective. Really has been very effective.
And if they have been observing us, we have to assume a few things, right? So they've been observing us for a while. It doesn't matter who they are or what part of the galaxy, getting into specifics, but they probably know a lot of things about us. They know what scares us. They know what makes us happy. They know our languages. They study us. They know. And you would have to, in that kind of observation, you would have to know what schools are. They probably have schools themselves. What a fascinating thing to observe of another species is the schoolyard and the children. Yeah, absolutely. That would make perfect sense, doesn't it?
I think it's 100% intentional. I really do. There was a very famous case in Hillsdale College, which I'm going to put that in the category of Schoolyard Encounters.
It is.
Which is, you know, in March of 1966, which, you know, 80 students, faculty, police officers. This craft actually landed. Not a lot of people know this, but this thing actually landed in the swamps in front of the school. It was there for over an hour, closer to 2.
Was this the women's college?
No, this is Hillsdale College. Well, there was a women's dorm, but there was.
Oh, it was a women's dorm. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. But what's really interesting about that is Jim and Coral Lorenzen were, of course, aware of this case and said, well, you know, this is interesting. We have a lot of schoolyard cases. Ray Fowler also chimed in. He says, you know, I've investigated 15 cases that I think are unexplained up to this year. This is like March, right? And he says 8 were over schoolyards. 8 of them. That's over half. And Jim and Coral Lorenzen said, you know, this is going to happen again. 2 weeks later, this is really interesting. Another pattern I noticed, kind of like a book tour or, you know, a concert tour. A musician goes from place to place to place. This is what these ETs are doing. I do think that's what we're dealing with here, because it was 2 weeks later that Westall happened. Absolutely predicted.
Is that right?
Yep.
Now, I just gave you my favorite case. As we get started through this, do you have a favorite case, a schoolyard case that stands out for you?
Oh, gosh, you know, there are quite a few favorite cases for me. One is probably one that happened in Maranui, New Zealand. This was Richmond School. This is an elementary school. I like this one. May 17, 1970. The teachers are out on the playground, and all of a sudden, it's deadly quiet. None of the kids are screaming and playing and shouting. And teachers looking around like, what's going on? And they're all staring up. And sure enough, here is this enormous craft, which the teacher said took up almost a third of the sky. Big black looking disc, shiny, and went right over the darn school, right overhead, and stayed there for a full 10, maybe 15 minutes.
What?
There's an airport nearby. This turns up in the Crestview case and a case in Florence. In a number of cases, there's an airport right next to the school. Apparently, they didn't see anything. At any rate, it stays there. Kid comes running up. What is that? He says, I think it's a UFO. Turns on its side, darts off super fast. There were 400 people who saw that. It's undeniable. I mean, how you can't deny something like this.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of things that stand out with that I don't know if I've ever heard before, actually. First off, the size of that craft, black and shiny. That's a very unique description. You've heard enough descriptions yourself over the years. That's a pretty unique one. But to have it stay up there for 10 minutes and then whoop, turn on its side and take off, that's pretty unique, isn't it?
Well, not as unique as you'd think. This is something that UFOs will do. They'll suddenly turn on the side and take off. It's one of the kind of markers I look for when people are describing. That absolutely happened in the Westall High School case. When it lifted up, it turned on its side and off it went.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So
that's true.
But yeah, that's definitely a favorite case. But I found 100 cases, Jimmy. And
Let's go.
I could double that now. Seriously. Like
Right.
This one is one of my favorite cases. I love this one. This one most of these don't get national headlines. These are in local newspapers is where I found the vast majority of these. But this one's fairly well known. October 22nd, 1954, Jerome Elementary School in Marysville, Ohio. All the kids are out on the playground when there's like 60 students when they see these two objects, which are actually higher up than usual, 500, 1,000 feet. And they're darting around and they're putting on a whole display. And finally, one of the kids gets the bright idea, let's get the teachers here. So they call the principal, actually. He comes out and he's looking at it. And he calls another teacher. She comes out, and at that second, these objects dart away and release volumes of what we call angel hair. Now, for those who haven't heard of angel hair, it's cotton candy-ish, spiderwebby-ish, and generally speaking, disintegrates almost immediately. Not in this case. It coated the playground. In fact, it coated a mile around the school. The school was absolutely the target. These are not cases where the UFO is flying by and children happen to see it. They come right over the school and stop in each and every one of these cases. I discarded the flybys that looked random. And so we have so much angel hair that teacher, they're scooping it up and they're rolling it in balls. It turned their hands green. They actually gathered a sample and sent it off to Lockbourne Air Force Base. Never heard back from them about it. But later it was found out that Robert White of this Air Force saucer study pointed out that case is the one that really impressed his group as something that they could not explain. It's one of a number of cases involving angel hair.
Yeah.
But so interesting because this was so widely viewed and it's got physical evidence.
What is it about angel hair, which was a phenomenon that went on for probably 20 years? And from the 50s into the late 60s. So there's other cases after that too as well. But one of the most famous cases, again, you brought this up, this was a soccer match in Italy. Yep. And there was 15,000 people in the stands, and then a craft appears overhead, the game stops, right? And what's released onto the field? Angel hair.
Yeah.
And that was, when you have 15,000 witnesses and sports reporters and the media that is there for the match, everybody saw this happen. But apparently, and everybody was talking about this angel hair, all of the witnesses, but it dissolved, right? And it is that usually the case with angel hair, that it doesn't really have like a shelf life? It disintegrates.
Yeah, those people have managed to gather samples and send it off to scientific study. It has boron in it, barium, some other interesting chemicals that shouldn't be just occurring naturally in fibers that fall from the sky.
Right.
But,
yeah, I remember seeing, you probably saw the same thing, I saw a sample of angel hair in a test tube. This was around 1960, but there it was in the test tube. And then it went to the lab, and it was just at the bottom of the test tube, just a pile of tiny little pile of dust. It just disintegrated in the test tube.
Yep.
But they were able to test that.
Yeah, well,
Right.
Here's another case which I really like. This is Whitsett, North Carolina. And this is like 2 years to the day of the Jerome Elementary School. This is such a good case. It's amazing. 120 students are on the playground, and teacher, principal, these are sort of sphere-shaped objects, and I think there's 4 or 5 of them darting around, putting on their display, race off, and drop volumes of angel hair. One little kid puts it up and puts it in his mouth. The teacher ran up, tried to stop him. It was too late. He spit it out. He said it did not taste good. It was kind of salty. But turns out that the principal was in the Air Force. He flew all kinds of planes. You know, he's very good at airplane recognition, aircraft recognition. Air Force sent over somebody and tried to debunk it, and he wasn't having it. He gave him an earful. He says, listen, I know more about planes than you do. This was absolutely unexplained. But they did gather samples. They sent one off to Burlington Scientific Labs.
And
Could not identify it. They said, send it to a biologist. There's a possibility this might be spider webs, which obviously it wasn't. But they did. And the person said, no, this is not spider webs. It's far too uniform. And if this were spider webs, you would have seen hundreds of thousands of spiders, because they generally come together.
yeah.
But yeah, that's the only case I could find where someone actually ate angel hair. It's not cotton candy, children, just so you know.
Kids. I don't know. Yeah, I might have done it. It depends on my age. If I'm 5, right? I remember I think I ate a crayon once. I remember doing that. Did you ever eat a crayon?
I tasted it, sure.
Yeah. So angel hair looks like cotton candy. Yeah, I could see that happening. Can we talk about Westall really quick for those that don't know?
Yeah.
And what happened there?
Yeah, this is such a great case. This is Australia's most widely viewed and probably most famous case, next to the Frederick Valentic case. But this one, I think his name is Shane Hurd. There's a researcher who's absolutely still on the ball with this.
Yeah, Shane Hurd. Yeah, good guy.
Getting all kinds of new information on it. And this is such an amazing case. There's 300 students out there, 200 to 300, and teachers when these UFOs show up. You know, a kid came running into class, there's a UFO outside. So everyone's running out and looking at this thing. And a group of the braver students basically left school grounds. And this is how it always happens. They land in a grove of trees right behind the school. And there was 2 craft, according to multiple reports, quite close to each other, landed on the ground. People who got there first, they could feel the heat coming off of it. One person fainted. They had to call an ambulance. She ended up disappearing for years. That was a big to-do. It left landing traces. These were quickly plowed over at some point. But what's so interesting about this case, and there's airplanes flying around from an airport real close to it, and complete pandemonium among the students and teachers. I mean, absolute chaos. So the military shows up almost as soon as these objects leave. The military is there in jeeps. Everyone's being ushered into the auditorium. The teacher basically, or the principal, they've got a different word for it in Australia, but essentially the principal makes a speech saying, if you think you saw UFOs, you're sadly mistaken. You are not to talk about this. And this is what's crazy to me. Students, without parental permission, were brought individually into offices and questioned by military officials and threatened, absolutely threatened not to talk about this. It was very effective. There was an article, but it was very effectively covered up until Dr. James McDonald came over there a year later and busted it open, and people started talking about it, and still talking to this day.
Yeah,
I mean,
the local news came in, and that tape is missing to this day.
Someone took photographs.
Well, that was the science teacher. Now, that's another interesting point here. So the science teacher from the front of the school came running out with his camera, snapped some pictures, and we had like a Men in Black situation that occurred, and his camera was taken from him. In James Fox's film, I think it was The Phenomenon. I can't remember which one. I think it was The Phenomenon. That science teacher, he was able to get one of the pictures that has never been seen before, the Westall UFO. And it's pretty amazing that one still image survives. And it is your typical silver disc shaped craft shot from underneath. Yeah. So you had that. Also, one of the craft landed in the town square a few blocks away, and landed on the street and blocked traffic for a minute, and then took off. And that was seen by multiple witnesses. Yeah,
rarely are these one-offs or individual events. The Rua, Zimbabwe case, Ariel Elementary School, 1994, I think, September, was in the middle of a huge wave. People were seeing UFOs all over the place. The school was clearly the target of a major event that would become world famous, but absolutely other people in most of these cases are seeing UFOs around this time in that area.
And how about, what do you make, going back to Westall, because this applies to Ariel and a few other schools, but going back to Westall, that's 1966, so that's 50 years ago. So now those 5-year-old students are 55 years old, right? They're adults today. And what do you think about their memories and how they recall that day as an adult? Fascinating, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's just really poignant. You can see the sincerity, the emotion in their eyes, and how deeply it affected them. And you can see this with all the students who have this kind of experience. Not one has ever, well, there was one guy in the Ariel Elementary School who's saying it was a hoax, but 99% of these people have never retracted their stories. There's never been any indication it was a hoax. They're very deeply affected. A good number of them, become teachers, or one guy, Malcolm Robinson. He's very famous. He's wrote UFOs over Scotland 1 and 2. He had a schoolyard encounter. A number of these people become UFO researchers or astrophysicists or scientists or astronomers. It impacts them deeply. In the Rua, Zimbabwe case, Emily Trim, she became a contactee. Some of these people are contactees, essentially, stemming from this schoolyard incident. So there's absolutely impacts them. And you can see interviews from the Westall witnesses today. It's amazing. There's a monument. They put a monument up to memorialize it at the site. It's amazing.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any truth to this, but I had read that the student that was debunking Ariel wasn't actually a student there. He wasn't even there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's funny that there was initially no teachers said they saw anything. Turned out, well, one did, and she had direct contact. We saw that with the Broadhaven case too in Wales. They thought it was just kids. Now we know there's 3 adults who saw it as well. They're not as likely to come forward.
I don't. Let's talk about Wales for a second. Not only Wales, the UK in general. A lot of cases, schoolyard cases out of the UK. When you go and you research this, as you have, and you start to, there is a high prevalence of schoolyard cases over the decades out of Scotland, Wales, the UK, Ireland. What do you think is going on with that? And do you have a favorite case from there?
Oh gosh, you know what? Well, I can tell you this. I did a whole study on this, and I found that cases are everywhere. China, Japan, Russia, all across Europe, UK, Canada, of course, the United States, Africa. It's everywhere. South America. So I think what I found was US was first, UK was second. I think Canada was third. I did a little analysis of that, but yeah, some amazing cases. Easily the most famous is the Broadhaven one in 1977 in Wales, which is such a good case. Now there's 5 or 10 cases that really rose up and are very well known.
What happened at Broadhaven?
Yeah, this is 1977. There was a wave of sightings going on, and students were out there playing when this UFO showed up, and as it always does, it lands in a grove of trees right behind the school. And kids ran up to it, and they didn't get too close, but they saw this being come out, which isn't your typical gray. And there's some varying descriptions, but it was apparently wearing a uniform of some kind, and they were really impressed by the eyes, as people often are. And it stayed up there on top of the craft, I believe, walked around a little bit, went back in, and took off. And later we found out that 2 janitors saw it, and I believe 1 teacher. And I'm so glad the teachers react the way they do in these cases. They separate the kids and have them draw their pictures. And you can see this with the Rua, Zimbabwe case and the Broadhaven case and Roosevelt Elementary School, another in the UK. Again, same sort of thing, a group of students. They have reunions every year to memorialize this. This changes people's lives.
In the Broadhaven case, where there's a photograph of all the students sitting there holding up their pictures, right? Yep. With the teachers. It's a fantastic photograph. Yeah, that is a good move. John Mack did that too as well. With Ariel, and he interviewed everybody individually. Him being a professional psychologist and Harvard and everything else, of course, tied to that. Your professional standards have to come into play, and we're talking about kids and a phenomenon that we just don't understand. And Mac, when you hear him interview these kids and have them tell their story, he handled it right, didn't he?
Yeah, he sure did. And it's a really amazing thing to watch, because these students are very much trying real hard to describe something that they have not, they didn't know about ETs. This is, primary age students. I mean, there are some that were older, but what's really interesting about this case is it's one of few where there was communication. There was, 200 students on this. This is a pretty big school, and not all of them saw this, but a good number, at least 60 or 70, and about 10 or 20 saw these beings. And there was
face to face.
Right. And like Emily Trim, she said it communicated, and the ET told her through images that we are getting too technological. There's a good way to use technology and a bad way, and we could do better. Another was told, you need to stop chopping down the forests because you won't have enough air. And one was warned of pollution, and all the people will die if this goes on. Now, mind you, this is in Rua, Zimbabwe, which is not a rural area or an urban area by any means. So environmentalism wasn't really a hot topic.
No, they're not worried about pollution there.
No.
Or deforestation. Here, I'll tell you what, it's a fantastic point. Oh, back to John Mack for a second. When I would listen to John do the interviews, I would just be saying to myself, don't blow it. Don't blow it.
Don't lead the witness.
Yeah. Don't do it. And woo, but yeah, because he just handled himself right. Now, my question to ET, going back to your point right there about pollution and cutting down trees, my question to ET is not about how to cure cancer or free energy. I don't give a shit. That doesn't matter to me. You know what my question to ET is, Preston? How did you guys do it? How did you survive? That's it. How did you get to the point where you can come and visit us? Because we're at the crossroads right now. We know now that we need to somehow survive, right? We can blow ourselves up. We have disease, we have famine, we have all these, natural disasters. We have so many things going on right now that could end life as we know it on this planet. A self-induced extinction event, right? Now, ET has gone through that. So what, and what if they just came back with, okay, how do we do it? We stop polluting ourselves, or whatever that message is, how do we survive? And maybe that is exactly what ET is trying to tell us. Man, you guys are screwing up. If you want to get to where we are, don't do these things, and then you could live to see another day.
Yeah, the messages are very consistent. The messages that the kids got is absolutely what adults get when they're taken on board. It's almost always warnings against nuclear proliferation, war and aggression, pollution, the destruction of the environment, raising our psychic abilities. That's a big one. But these sort of things are the things that ETs seem to be most concerned about, or in terms of the advice that they give us. But that's a great question. I would like to know, did they use money at some point? How did they get over the violence of, I don't know, maybe we're just particularly violent species.
You have to ask them the important questions. Who was better, David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar? I need the answers to these, but and not to be funny here, but when we go back and look at the Fermi paradox, one of the answers to the Fermi paradox question, which is, if there's so much life out there, then where is everybody? Right? Okay, that frames it close enough. And one of the answers to the Fermi paradox that Carl Sagan and others have brought forward is, what? Just maybe an advanced civilization goes so far before they just kill themselves off. Maybe that's it. That's why they're not here, because they get to a certain point and then stuff happens. And that actually makes a lot of sense. And it's something that we should actually consider when we look at ourselves and the direction we're going on our own planet, right?
Yeah, well, I kind of look at the Fermi paradox as a failed theory, because they are here. The universe is incredibly populated from what we're seeing in terms of the huge number of cases. I mean, if you look at Newfork and MUFON, they've got 100,000, more than 100,000 cases each.
200,000 cases, yeah. Well, so, but you're right. I said this maybe 6 months ago on the show. I'm so glad you brought this up. Would Fermi ask the same question today? No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. Back then, it was different. Radar was new. Right. Yep. You have to consider when Fermi did this, 1952, 1953, so things like that were new. Space exploration and ideas and all this was all fresh stuff. And so, yeah, you kind of got to look at it like that. But would Fermi ask the same question today? I don't think so. Back then we hadn't found an exoplanet yet. We wouldn't find an exoplanet for another 40 years. The first exoplanet. I mean,
we weren't even investigating humanoid reports really at all. The UFO community was very reluctant to investigate humanoid reports. Certainly crash retrievals, and which are now considered the cutting edge.
Right.
Bringing it back to schoolyard cases, I did find one kind of an outlier in 1853 at Burritt College in Spencer, Tennessee.
Really?
And it's putting on a display, but really March 1950 was the earliest I could find. At Prestonburg, Kentucky, 35 students and a teacher had a UFO come down, scared the living daylights out of them, because this thing came down and was circling pretty low. And the kids were panicking. One vomited. They were ran into the school, came out later for lunch. UFOs show up again, much lower this time. Poor teacher, Mrs. Alpharetta Holbrook, nearly lost her mind trying to keep these students in line. But
And they didn't have any idea what they were looking at.
No, most of these kids don't. They're like, what's that? They can tell it's strange, but.
And this was reported in the local paper?
Yeah. I didn't find any of these cases in books, one or two. You know, you can see my books back there. I was going through them, and I kind of stumbled on this one, because I was getting my own schoolyard cases. My sister-in-law saw a gray right in front of Stagg Street Elementary School. I thought that's the oddest place you'd ever think to see one of these things. Then I had another guy.
Preston, I just thought about this. One of the craziest things that ever happened to me was in the schoolyard of my elementary school.
Okay.
And yeah, Clearview Elementary in Waukegan, 1971, 1972.
Oh, you're killing me. Yeah, I'm Waukegan too. I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. Clearview.
That's where I was. What year did you say?
1972.
Oh, I left in 1971.
Yeah, well, me too. Well, I was there in 71, 70, 71, 72. What, you went to Clearview Elementary?
I was in Waukegan. I don't remember what school we went to.
Holy shit. How did we never talk about this before?
I don't know. I heard you met last time we were on. I'm like, what? Waukegan? You're kidding me.
Yeah. So yeah, we lived off of Lewis Avenue and like Berwick. And Berwick was the street that Clearview Elementary was on, but Lewis being the main drag that goes through Waukegan. I was born at Great Lakes Naval Station.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, so this is 1971, 72. I'm going to say it's like right in there, and 4th grade. And I'm crossing the street to go over to the playground at Clearview Elementary. And I see something in the sky. It's just like lunchtime, noon. And I look up and I see what I think is the Hindenburg. Yeah. And it's low, cruising right up. I see people. It's low. And I take off running and I follow it all the way across the schoolyard until it flew over the trees and disappeared. And I watched it I was underneath it for probably 5 minutes or thereabouts. So years later, I'm sitting in here in this studio here, and that memory popped in my head. And I thought, oh, that's easy to research. What airship was over Chicago in 1971? Right? So I go and Google this, and I find out this, and I swear every hair on my neck just stood straight up. There were no airships in the world. Period. Not since 1938. Goodyear blimp, but not an airship. After the Hindenburg crash in New Jersey in 1937, everything was grounded. That was it. It was done. And the United States Navy had 3. The Akron, the Ohio, and the Los Angeles. Those 3 airships. 2 crashed. 1 was dismantled after Hindenburg. And that was it. And so there were none in the world. So what did I see? What did I see? I don't know. And that was in a schoolyard.
You remember seeing people, though?
I do. What I remember, this is the crazy thing. I think I waved. Like, hey.
Were they in a little gondola?
Yeah. But this was giant, man. It was giant. And I could have sworn my memory was it said Los Angeles on the front. And I always thought that over the years. And when I found out that the Los Angeles was dismantled in 1938, I nearly lost my mind. I don't know how to explain this. I don't. The event happened. That happened. What it was, I don't know. Time slip. Man, did I go back in time? Did something go forward in time? I don't know. But I saw what I saw. I drew it for months.
Were there other kids there?
Yeah. I was going to play with my friends in the schoolyard. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. I was probably 8 years old, 8, 9, like right in there. I moved to Indianapolis in 72, 73. So yeah, this happened in 71, 72. And I was, like I said, I was 8 years old, 9 years old. I was of the age, all boys at that age, especially at that time, totally into planes, totally into helicopters, totally into the Air Force, totally into the space age, I was into all those things. So I was fascinated with what I saw. I couldn't explain it. I didn't know what the Hindenburg was. I didn't know what those things were. But I saw what I saw. Yeah. Crazy, right? But that was at Clearview Elementary School, right over the schoolyard. Yeah. Yep.
Pretty darn interesting. I interviewed a guy from England who said we were all out there and we thought it was a plane, but the plane stopped. It stopped in midair. Planes, of course, can't do that. I'm like, did you hear a sound? He's like, I never thought about it. I don't think we did. But they could see little figures in there looking down at them. It wasn't close enough to see, what they looked like, really, just more like silhouettes. But moving around and looking down.
Yeah, this was low. I don't know about altitude or anything, but it was like, here, hold on. Let me go to the front camera. If it was above me, so put your arms out like it was like that. So I don't know, 1,000 feet, 500 feet above me. Heard it, just the engines, and it was low and just cruising. And I looked right at the gondola and I saw people standing in a row there. And I when it was right here, I'm pretty sure I waved. I mean, we looked at each other and then it just kept going. So I ran underneath it, man. Yeah. I realize I'm not stupid, Preston. I know how crazy this sounds. I do, but it happened. It sounds nuts.
Could be another of these schoolyard encounters. I'm telling you, this is absolutely a thing.
I know you had your sightings as an adult. We got to take a break and we're going to do that right now. Did you have anything happen when you were really, really young, or anything that somebody else told you happened when you were a kid?
I scoured my past. I did have a possible missing time incident. We're 6 kids in the family. You don't miss lunch, because if you do, you're going to be hungry.
Right.
And I was in my room waiting because we all pretty much ate together. And they never called me. And finally I come out. I'm like, what's going on? They said, where were you? I'm like, I was in my room. I'm like, no, you weren't. We went in there. We called you.
Oh, man.
I'm like, well,
really?
I was really upset, because, like I said, 6 kids.
Yeah.
I wanted my damn lunch. And that was weird, because that's when I started, other little things like that. Nothing I could really pinpoint and say, boom, that's contact.
I had Jason Martell, right? So Jason is at my house and we're having a little dinner party, and I invite over a friend of mine from junior high school. His name's Javier Cedeno. And Javier, who I hadn't seen at this point, I hadn't seen Javier in 40, 50 years since we were kids, but he was the drummer in our high school garage band. Okay. He still plays and he's great. He's amazing, but I hadn't seen him in a long time. So he comes over, we're having dinner, and this is what he tells everybody at the table. I couldn't believe it. He goes, hey man, do you remember that time when me, you, Alan, and Rocky, and Bill White, you saw the flying saucer above us with the spinning lights, and we all just stared at it. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, dude, it was me, you, dot, 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 dot. And the spinning flying saucer with the lights, and it was right above us. And you said, look, it's a flying saucer. I go, dude, what are you talking about? That wasn't me. And he goes, it was you. So he gets on the phone. Preston, he calls a couple of our friends from high school. And they were all like, yeah, Jimmy, that was you. I don't remember it.
Red flag.
Yeah.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Yeah,
I remember you telling me this, actually.
Yeah.
That is a huge red flag that you're a contactee. Just saying.
I know. It really, okay, so I remember Jason Martell going, oh, church, are you listening to what he's saying? I'm like, man, I don't want it. Really? Do you think? Well, what do you think? You don't remember. And as other people heard the story, they were saying the same thing. Man, that's the classic. I do not remember. I don't know if I want that one regressed.
I had a real close-up sighting of an orb in front of my car, darted off. I didn't remember it for months. Completely left my mind. And one day I just remembered it. But absolutely, that had to be missing time too, because I would have turned around and told my family, and I would have wrote it down. I was in the middle of investigating UFOs. This was a big deal.
Right.
Forgot it completely. Completely forgot it.
Are you okay with, okay, Preston, we'll get back to school. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back to Schoolyard UFOs, everybody. But I have to ask Preston a question. Are you okay with finding out what happened
100%.
during this missing time?
100%.
Really?
I think I've pretty much pulled it out through, dreams and flashbacks. So, because I've got some stuff going on with me, no doubt.
So you're okay. I'm not, I don't know. I kind of want to just leave it where it is.
Hi, you're okay. You're sitting here. You're fine. What could be so bad?
I don't know. I don't know. I had a sleep paralysis. I'm not going to tell the story, but I had a sleep paralysis thing that happened in Sherman Oaks right around the time when I got your first flyer, right? So this is like in the early 90s or something when I got my first. I had that flyer here somewhere. I've got to dig it up, by the way. I saved it. But anyway, it was right around that time. And I had this sleep paralysis thing. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I'm just leaving that thing right there. I'm not.
Well, it'll come
really
back
weird. I'm not
ready.
curious. I'm not curious at all.
All right.
My memory of it and what went down is good enough because that was frightening to me.
Well, just be prepared because one day something might remind you of it and it's going to come flooding back, or you're going to have a dream and meditate.
Or what if the being comes back? Oh, by the way, that was me in 92. I don't know. Preston, stay right there. Let's take our break. This is Fade to Black, the one and only Preston Dennett is with us tonight. We are talking about Schoolyard UFOs. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black T-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 T-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black T-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. Jimmy Church Guy TV, Fade to Black, here at Machu Picchu with Brian Forster and Hidden Inca Tours. Amazing tour so far, Brian, but we're here to announce what we're going to do next year in 2026. What's going on?
Okay, November 2026, we're going to have our major tour of Peru and Bolivia, either a pre or post tour of Paracas and Nazca on the coast. And then after that, 6 days in Easter Island.
Bucket list, Easter Island. Come join Brian and I and his amazing team here at Hidden Inca Tours for Peru, Bolivia, and Easter Island. Signing out. Say goodbye, Brian.
Bye, gang.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, the one and only Preston Dennett is with us. We're talking about Schoolyard UFOs. And I just told a couple stories about my youth. And one, which was a schoolyard thing. I don't know what I saw that day. But that was over a schoolyard. But then the case with my friend Javier Cedeno, telling the story that, Church, it was you that saw, and he called it a flying saucer, and he said that there were spinning lights around it, and it was right above us for quite a while, and I don't remember it. And I say this all the time, and I'm going to ask this to Preston. How many of us have encounters like that just get put away on a shelf and forgotten, right? It's just something that just goes and it gets put in a box. And I ask people all the time, Preston, just go back into your memory and think about something that you forgot about because life gets in the way. You grow up and, things happen and you become an adult, but go back and think about your childhood. We have probably forgotten much more than we remember, right?
Oh, yeah. This is a big problem in this field in particular. I mean, Bud Hopkins talked about this. He had one client who the only indication of any contact was a fear of a certain stretch of road. And of course, further digging revealed a major onboard experience. And it makes me wonder just how common this is. Because
now, and speaking of it in those terms, how many cases when we're talking about schoolyards just don't make it into ufology and it doesn't become something that is discussed? These cases are very frequent. Do you have cases that I don't want to say that nobody's ever heard of, but that just may be what I'm trying to get to, cases that just slip between the cracks?
100%. I mean, I talk to people who haven't reported anything, and I'm getting cases now. Most of these cases have one or two reporting witnesses, even though that there were, 50 or 100 people who were there, and none of them really made national news. I've discovered this kind of by accident, hearing about the Ariel Elementary School, and I thought about, wasn't there one in Australia? Yeah, the Westall High School case. And I thought, Hillsdale, Broadhaven. I'm like, gosh, I know I heard one in Florida. I had to look that one up. It was 1 year to the day, Jamie, April 6, 1967. Westall was April 6, 1966.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that weird pattern again. I'm telling you, these ETs are doing this on purpose. But the vast majority of these cases are not reported.
Can we go down? You've got hundreds of cases like this. Take us through some of the lesser known ones.
Okay, here's a case which I absolutely love, which people probably haven't heard of. March 1979 in Morganton, North Carolina, the School for the Deaf. This is where the children go who are hard of hearing. And this UFO starts approaching the school. And some people see it. And so this is around 7:30 at night, one of the rare nighttime cases. And this thing is coming solo. The teacher's there. I think it's going to actually hit the building. It went about 50 feet over the building. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. This thing was making a deep thrumming noise. And it turned out all the deaf children could hear, quote, hear this thing. Came running out and saw it. And to me, this was just particularly poignant and touching because it looks to me like these ETs were doing this on purpose, making this deep thrumming noise to bring the attention to the students so that they could actually see this thing too and, quote, hear it.
They probably felt it.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow.
But it's just an amazing case, which, there was another school in Norway, School for the Deaf, where a craft actually landed. Kids saw a little guy looking out through the windshield. It left landing traces. It was very well verified, investigated by police, military, UFO researchers. It's almost completely unknown. Most of these cases are not well known at all. And I'm going to have to put out another edition of this book because I keep getting new cases. It's insane.
Now, what about anything negative? Is there anybody injured? Abductions with the schoolyard?
I didn't find any cases of anyone injured. There were certainly cases where people had some physiological effects, feeling dizzy, excessive sleepiness, this sort of thing.
But nobody was attacked. Nobody was threatened.
Nope. There was one case investigated by Leonard Stringfield where a kid came home. He's like, Mom, Dad, UFO appeared over the school. And I'm like, oh, that's nice, honey. That night he had a visitation, and the little humanoid came in and said, we need to talk to you. You need to come with us. Freaked him out. He said the UFO followed him home from school. And he told his parents, who didn't believe him, well, he disappeared. He emptied their bank account of what he was able to get, left a note, and says, they're after me, I have to go. So they ended up contacting Leonard Stringfield because he called them, because this kid called him. And they called the police, and they ended up finding him at Atlanta Airport. And he was ready to take a flight to who knows where. So, this can really freak some people out. There are cases where people absolutely do have a level of panic, but in most cases, no. The kids are joyous. They're jumping up and down. They're like, look at this. This is so cool. What is it? It's the adults who freak out and start rounding up. Well, here's a really good example. This occurred in 1966, right around the same time as the
Westall.
case. Yeah, and also the other one, the Michigan case, Hillsdale College. I interviewed this lady firsthand. Melody is her name, and she was at Point Elementary School in St. Louis, Missouri. All these kids are on the playground. They're playing Foursquare, and they decide 6 of them are going to go over to the far end of the field and play tag. And they get there and they see these weird footprints. I'm like, well, that's odd, because there's a really small footprints and they're bipedal. And even at that age, 13, 10, they knew that this was odd. But then their attention was distracted by lights in the trees right behind the school. And they're thinking, ice cream truck. This is what they thought. They're kids. So they walk off the school boundary, which is against the rules, and run into the trees. And it's not an ice cream truck, of course. It's a landed craft. Classic disc. And there is a humanoid in front. And it's not a gray, and it's not a human looking. This one, she said, had the face more of a gorilla, is how she could best describe it. Very muscular, wearing a black jumpsuit. They ran right up to this thing. They were 20 feet away, maybe closer. They all lined up, all 6 kids in a row, and we're looking at this thing, and it kept its gaze fixed on them, backed up slowly into the craft. And that's when Mrs. Ollendorf, the teacher, came running up behind, screamed bloody murder, grabbed the kids, pulled them back into the class. Of course, they're telling everyone, look, look. And the whole class runs to the window, and they can see this thing in the trees. He's furiously closing the blinds, calling for the principal, calling for the other teachers. They ushered them out of the classroom into the auditorium where nobody could see because there was only high windows up at the top. And of course, they see the UFO fly up through, visible through the windows. School was cut short that day. They sent them home and forbade them to talk about it. But of course they did. It was the buzz of the school for months. So that was a really interesting case. That
they sent we've got UFOs flying around outside, but they send kids to walk home. And
Yep.
You know what I mean? They did that all the time to us.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened at Crestview. Crestview is another great case like Westall, Opelika, Florida. These craft land next to the school. Again, we have teacher testimony. There's 200 kids. This is an elementary school, not a high school. And the military shows up while these craft are still there and tell everyone, go home. If you walked to school, if you rode a bike, go home now. And, we're basically forming a perimeter to keep people away from these craft. This is no joke. They tried to blame it on helicopter tests. This one has multiple eyewitness testimonies. There's quite a few people who've come forward. But they ushered people onto buses and sent them off. The UFOs came back the next day, by the way.
Oh, did they really?
Oh, yeah. They sure did.
It makes you wonder about the psychological effects on children when, are adults lying to you or not? And if you look back at Westall, or like this Florida case, but if you look at Westall, some of these kids went out to the fence line and watched the military show up, right? And they were hiding and looking. And there was a bunch of them. And all reporting the same thing: trucks with military, jeeps with military, Geiger counters, testing equipment. They reported on all of this. Then the military comes back and says, we were never there.
Yep.
Now, you have to wonder about the psychological effects on children where they're going, wait a minute, no, we saw you there, but now you're saying you weren't there. Are you guys, we're not supposed to lie. We're supposed to tell the truth, but somebody's lying to me right now. And I think that has a deep effect on kids. These are helicopter tests. These are and the kids are going, no, we saw what we saw. You guys are lying to us. What are the psychological effects on children over the years because of the way that the adults are handling these cases?
Yeah, well, we see this over and over again. It's kind of the double whammy is how witnesses put it. They have this amazing encounter, which sometimes can be frightening, but certainly overwhelming and affecting you very deeply. I mean, your belief system is basically shattered. And then you go and ask for information or try to tell the story. Just find someone to listen. Nope. So basically, it's double trauma, which can be very, very upsetting for kids especially, but adults as well.
How has the media been handling these cases?
Not well. The media has never handled the UFO subject with any real, impartiality or thoroughness. Every year, one or two cases gets through to the mainstream media just because there's so many people who saw it, perhaps. But no, most of these cases never make it. Thank God we have hometown newspapers, because that's where I found most of these. I subscribe to the UFO news clipping service. There's a bunch of them. These days, you can go on the internet and find all kinds of newspapers. And UFO reporting services definitely helped. APRO, certainly, and Newfork and MUFON and QFOS. But yeah, this slid under the radar. I can't tell you how much this knocked my socks off. I cried when I heard some of these cases, because these are little kids. We love our
these are little kids. And you mentioned China, because I'm talking about the media and the government and military responses to this. And then you have a situation with China, as you have stated, this happens worldwide. But you don't have the Western media represented in China like we do in other countries, and also news and everything else. And it's a government controlled country and society with a heavy military influence on everything that you do and government control.
Yep.
What have you found with these schoolyard encounters in China?
Like you said, the information is very hard to get. Thank God I have this book called UFOs Over China by Paul Dong, which is really the only place I could find good information. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go through this book. I bet you I can find some schoolyard cases if this is really a thing. And I found 3 or 4. One which really comes to mind because it was so impressive was these objects came over the school. This was like the pre-dawn hours. So bright. Came right down, they could feel the heat from them and lit up the whole area. Everyone saw it. There was some panic, people scattering to get away from these things, but described as just glowing oval objects, almost fiery, but came in a this is so interesting to me because they come from perhaps the zenith or up in the sky, but usually from the horizon line, and come directly targeting the school. And then they dip lower and they go right low, low, low over the school, and off they go. You cannot tell me that that's not intentional.
No, like you said, with the deaf school, one of the craft, they thought it was going to hit the building.
Precisely. Yep. And there's good evidence in some of these cases. Westall, of course, does have the landing traces, and there's a few in these cases. There was one in Norway. There was one in Malaysia, all over the world. But there was a case at Sacred Heart Elementary School in Moline, Illinois, which was, Catholic school. 50 kids are on the playground. 3 nuns are watching. This giant UFO shows up, and it's low. And there's a police officer on the schoolyard as well. Well, he has a video camera in his cruiser. His son is at the school too. Still talks about it to this day. And so this police officer runs to his cruiser, runs back, and manages, the craft is just moving off. I found this footage online. By today's standards, it's certainly not as good as the turkey footage, say. But you can see this little glowing object moving across the sky, and it's gone. He videotaped it. He got a lot of attention from this, took it to the police. They were very interested. Military guys showed up from some intelligence agency. They would not identify themselves. They wanted the footage. He showed it to them. But man, oh man, this is one case of a number where there was photographic evidence.
In the college case in Illinois, and I think you're right, it was women's dormitory, but
yeah,
what's that?
Hillsdale, Michigan.
Yeah, Hillsdale. So it was Michigan, I'm sorry. And back then we don't have them now. We had civil defense coordinators, right? And so you always, with the civil defense hat, right? with the symbol on the side. And all of the towns, all the schools, everybody, you had somebody that was appointed for this for a lot of different reasons, right? It could be tornadoes, nuclear attack was one of the big reasons for them. But it was somebody that you could call in case of an emergency. And that's what they did at Hillsdale. They called the civil defense coordinator. Dude, we got it, right? We've got this thing happening out there. And it took a minute for him to arrive, but he was also one of the key witnesses there. And you had the staff, you had everybody in the dorm, and the people, the students at the college were all there. But it was the civil defense coordinator who was one of the key witnesses that the women from the dorm called first. And it took him, I think, Preston, you can correct me on this, but I think it took 15 minutes. It took repeated calls to him. And finally, he tapped out and said, okay, man, I'm going to go check out the flying saucer. But he turned out to be one of the key witnesses. And that's how long this case lasted for. He showed up 15 minutes later and he was still a witness.
Yeah, it was almost 2 hours. The repercussions of this case cannot be underestimated. This was when J. Allen Hynek showed up and mentioned, could possibly be, I'm not saying it is, could possibly be swamp gas.
Yep.
He got eaten alive. He called it the low point of his career. He ended up defecting from Project Blue Book, largely because of this. Ford was representative of Michigan at that time, and he called for transparency on the subject, and it led to the first congressional hearing on UFOs. So this was a big deal, and I wonder, were the ETs aware of this, that there would be such a big impact? Raymond Fowler, I mentioned that he said he had earlier cases that year. Well, one of them was at Beverly High School. This is April 22nd, right before it, 1966, where 7 to 10 people saw these 3 craft. One was directly over the Beverly High School. One was way high up and one was much closer. Well, one of the women waves at this craft. It comes and swoops down and hovers. They said maybe 20 feet overhead. I'm guessing maybe 50. But she was, 2 of them ran. One lady, she's too petrified. She cannot move. Finally, they like, run. She peed herself. This frightened her that much. They called the police because it was still there. The police come like, who called for the airplane? And they're like, it's right there. The police were shaken, absolutely shaken. Finally, of course, they move off. 10 minutes later, they're going to the nearby college there, Gordon College, scare the living daylights out of students there. Very intentional. Blue Book shows up, doesn't do an investigation, doesn't do anything, says it's Venus. That was Venus you think you saw. No, Venus is not going to swoop down and make you, mess your pants. So this was just one of the cases that was going on at this time. This is a very concerted publicity campaign on the part of the ETs.
Now, we started the show with this. I want to circle back to it after this fascinating discussion. Why, your overarching theory on this, why schoolyards? Yeah.
Again, I can only really speculate. But what we can see just based on their behavior is this is what UFO researchers call a display, intentionally showing themselves. Because you don't really see that with UFOs. They come down, they do what they have to do, scoop someone up, and off they go. And usually people never even see that. We don't see people being taken on board almost ever. And here they are coming down over schools and putting on a show. Why? Why would they do this? Why to children? Why mostly elementary, primary age students? And I think Jim and Carl Lorenzen said it right off the bat. They called this acclimatization, to get people used to the idea of UFOs, that we're being visited. And like I said earlier, I think this is very clever on their part. I think ultimately this is exactly what they're doing. It's a publicity campaign. They're reaching out to our youngest students, get them while they're young. We all have heard that. And this is very clever because children are kind of seen and not heard. They come running and tell everyone, I saw this. Go away, kid. Don't bother me. But they know it's real. They saw it. And they're going to grow up one day, and they're going to be the movers and shakers of society. And of course, that's exactly what's happened. And it's been very effective to sort of introduce all humanity to this subject. And I think ultimately that's what's going on here. It's a simple publicity campaign to let us know we're not alone. Because they're not really taking people on board. They're not. It's mostly what we would call close encounters of the first kind. So,
a couple of years ago, check that. I got a little schoolyard case for you. A couple of years ago, I'm at Best Buy, and I'm coming out, and I have a shopping cart with something in it, and I'm in the parking lot, and this voice comes up in back of me, and goes, "Fade to black," and I stopped, and I turn around, and I go, "Yeah," and he goes, "Oh, it's you," and I said, "Yeah," and he goes, "Hey, man. I've got a Jeep too. I parked next to you and I saw your fade to black Jeep and I knew it was you." So, well, it's me. And he goes, "Hey, man, you got time for a story?" I go, "Oh, sure. What you got?" And this is what he says, Preston. He goes, "Man, back in the 90s, when I was he goes, I was born and raised here. And at the high school for 2 years, they were test flying black octagon craft." I said, "What?" Right? Okay. And he just took me by surprise. And he said, "So we would be out there in the schoolyard, and these things would be flying over the schoolyard like Star Wars." And he said they made no noise. I said, "How big were they?" And he goes, "From here to Best Buy." And he points at the building, which was, I'm going to say 70 feet away from us. So a pretty substantial size craft. And he said it got to the point where we didn't think anything of it. We were out there playing and goofing around, and these things were just flying overhead, just silent. It's like, wow, that's a good story. Back to the acclamation comment that you made. That's exactly what he said. He said, "Man, we got to the point where, he really drove this home with me." He said, "At first, man, it was crazy. After that, after a couple of years, it just became nothing." And this was in the 90s. I immediately, Preston, I went home and I called Richard Dolan immediately. And I told him the story, and I said, "Have you heard of craft like this?" And at that time, no. Now there has been a few, whistleblowers and people that have come forward that have talked about these octagon-shaped craft. But up to that point, I'd never seen anything like that, and I'd never really heard of reports. But it was over Palmdale High School. Isn't that interesting?
Very, yeah.
Yeah.
There are some cases where it's pretty clear to me that it's reverse engineered. There was one at Iron Mountain. Oh gosh, I forget the state. It was northeast somewhere, where this craft came right over a tree, and it had rivets on it, and full-on rivets, battleship gray, plates of metal. It was silent. It was hovering over the tree. Everyone saw it. Teachers freaked out and rushed everyone inside. That one I think was probably reverse engineered. But it's odd, because what is it doing over a schoolyard? Why? Really? You're going to show them yourself to kids? I don't know.
I don't want to change gears, but I just want your opinion on this. Ross Coulthart came out recently, and the story is now taken over ufology from what he has stated. But he said that he has been told that the Tic Tac in 2004, the Nimitz encounter, was Lockheed Martin. What when you started to hear this story and hear it break, what do you make of it?
Well, I wondered about that certainly, because I think a lot of what people are seeing is probably our own. I asked Dolly about it because she's kind of my go-to girl, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that's not ours." Uh, I'm not really. That's not my area of expertise. I talk to people who've been taken on board or meet humanoids face to face, and that's kind of where my authority is, if you can call it that. But I am coming to learn that there's far more of our own stuff flying around. Michael Schratt is another guy I like to go to
Yeah.
for questions like this.
Hmm.
He's really done his research. He's very, very good at what he does. James Goodall. And there's some people out
Well,
there.
the reason why I think it's important with this conversation that we're having with the schoolyard stuff, and you're talking about acclimating, if we have stuff, whatever the technology is derived from, whether it's reverse engineering or just clever humans that are really smart, that we have stuff that is certainly that's being tested, that's decades ahead of when it's going to be eventually revealed to us, right? So it's being tested. Well, wouldn't that stuff be tested with our own military? And also, wouldn't they be tested just out in proximity to towns and stuff? It all can't be remotely tested. And and stuff that is seen over schools, or things that are seen by us that we can't explain, and we want to go immediately to UFO, but it could be us and our own government acclimating us to this idea. That's where I go with this. I just feel it in my bones. It doesn't explain everything.
Yeah.
ET
Well,
is here.
the whole UFO subject provides an excellent cover story.
It
Like,
does.
what you saw was probably a UFO. So, and it's a two-way street, and it's a tricky double-edged sword you're playing there with, because there are real encounters as well, and this can just
Yeah, the
reinforce
government
the idea.
the government would want you to say it was a UFO.
Right, but it's backfiring on them because it just reinforces the idea that there are UFOs out there, and most of these I don't think, in terms of the schoolyard encounters, are anything to do with the government. And there's
Right,
reasons I
right.
say that, because most of them are classic saucer shapes. They're coming down, and well, here's a case. One lady I interviewed, really interesting, because this is in Mentor, Ohio, where I found a really good drive-in theater case.
I've been to Mentor, Ohio,
Yeah,
outside of Cleveland. Yeah, it's a tiny town. I've been
yeah.
there.
This was in October of 1964. I interviewed this lady, and this is, of course, an elementary school. This kind of egg-shaped UFO, silver, drops down, and it's hovering there, or landing right behind the trees there. She calls over her friends, and there's 4 or 5 of them looking at this. None of the other kids seem to know it. They don't seem to notice it. And she gets a telepathic message in her head. And this is why I don't think this is government, because it said very clearly to her, "Remember this day. Remember this day." Said it twice. She said a male voice, clear English, not a knowing. It was communication, very clear. Took off like a bullet, leaving just a tracer. It was so fast. So when I get cases like that, because there's a number of them where kids get a really strong impulse to look up. There was one case, only one kid saw it. He said it messed up with his head because he pointed out to his friends, and they all teased him to no end. But he insists he saw this. It was over a crowded school ground. There was another where kids were shooting off rockets. That brought in a UFO, because there's a connection there. UFOs always appear when we do rocket launches. So there can be various causes for this, but I think by and large, these are ET, the schoolyard cases.
As a parent, how should parents react when their children have this kind of experience? What's the parent's responsibility?
The parent's responsibility is to, number one, listen and use your skills. Does your child lie? Would your child ever say something like this? Have they said this before? Listen to them. And if you have more than one witness, and you probably have the ability to do that, go to the school. This is what one parent did. Boy, was he furious when he found out that the teachers told none of the students to talk. His daughter did talk, and glad she did, because he found other families there who were able to verify this. So have your children draw the craft, perhaps, write it down, do something along these lines. He called the police, weren't interested. He called newspapers, weren't interested. He finally found New Fork, and you can actually hear his conversation in one of the tape files that they have of him describing his daughter's sighting. It's an amazing, I think this was at Downey Elementary School. It's a crazy case.
Really? The as a parent, I never had, my daughter Nicole never, I was hoping this would happen. Let me just put it that I'm just thinking deeply about this. I never had her come to me saying she's been hanging out with her secret friend. Right. I never had that. And we've all heard these stories, right? A parent going in and their child is having tea with an invisible, who are you having tea with? Oh, my friend. And so is it a ghost? Is it this? Is it that? But I never had that experience. My daughter never came at me with that or with the UFO sighting. I never had, I was never, as a parent, I never had the opportunity to talk her through it or to hear the story. Missing from my parenthood. That never happened to me.
Well, it's interesting because I have two nephews who had very close sightings. One had a very close-up UFO sighting, so did another, and a humanoid came into his room. His mom saw grays. My little sister, I was so mad, said, "Oh yeah, I saw a UFO." Like, what the heck? Why did you not tell me? She's like, I completely forgot about it. I had her over here not too long ago, and we went over the story again. I'm like, man, oh man, if I had known, this would have been a different story, because I was relying on my brother Mark. I didn't know this was in our family. This is absolutely in our family. My dad.
You have that. Preston, I don't have that. I don't have that.
Did you ask your parents ever? Or
you know what? I asked my mom before she died. My mom took me to go see Close Encounter. Chariots of the Gods when I was at Clearview Elementary. I went to go see Chariots of the Gods in Waukegan. And my mom was Edgar Casey. She had all of his books and Ouija boards, and she was doing automatic writing. She was doing all that crazy stuff when I was a little kid. So I called her. Now I'm on Coast to Coast, right? I'm hosting Coast. I got Fade to Black. I've got my TV shows. And I called my mom and I said, "Hey, so Mom, you want to come on the show and talk about what?" I said, "Well, about stuff, like you and Nancy and the Ouija boards and Eric Von Daniken and Chariots of the Gods." She goes, "That was then." I said, "Mom, people would love to hear this." And I wanted to talk to her about it, which I tried to do. And Preston, you know what she said? I'm not making this up. She goes, "I love the baby Jesus. That's where I'm at now." I said, "Wow." She was like, "I don't want to talk about it."
Yeah, I asked my grandmother once, and she says, "It's against my faith."
Yeah, that's what my mom said. That's what my mom said.
Very tough. My dad hated this subject, which to me was another red flag. Like maybe something happened. But yeah, this does track families. We know it does. I would, ask friends, ask, aunts, uncles. If you reach out to other relatives, you might be surprised.
Yeah, well, I know I tried. My Uncle Bill, who's a helicopter pilot, retired a helicopter pilot and trainer for the Army. And I think he did 2, maybe 3 tours in Nam, right? He went back. a great helicopter pilot. And so I had him on Fade to Black, my Uncle Bill. I did. I had him on this show.
Nice.
And I said, and I asked him, I said, so black helicopters real? And he goes, yeah, they're real. And he goes, if you look, the numbers are on them, but they're painted in black. I said, oh, really? He goes, yeah, they're not black helicopters. They're black, but the tail number is painted there, and it says U.S. Army or Air Force in black, and the tail number's in black. You just don't see it. It looks like a black helicopter. So black helicopters are real. As a matter of fact, he sent me a T-shirt, a black helicopter T-shirt. That's a U.S. Army thing. Anyway, so I said, what about UFOs? No, didn't see any. And privately, and he's probably going to listen to this show. He's a big fan. Privately, he kind of leaned that way. But on the show, he didn't want to talk about it. And this is my uncle. My uncle, my dad's brother, my uncle. Yeah, he was reticent. He was reticent. Yeah, I think that a lot in the military, Preston, do respect their service there, and what happens. And that's why I think it's so difficult for whistleblowers to come forward.
Yeah, well, some have NDAs. Dan Harari,
yeah,
he's talking about his father, who's clearly having stuff going on. Dolly Saffron, Earl Grey. You remember Earl Grey? Rest in peace.
Of course.
His mom was heavily into something that she would never talk about. She told him something at age 4, and he remembered it and repeated it. And she's like, "What? You were 4 years old? Never talk about this. I didn't think you would remember." But I think there's quite a few people out there whose parents want to talk about it, but really can't.
Well, they come from a different. We need to understand and maybe have a little more respect and empathy for that period of United States history and world history. Because you had the threat of the nuclear bomb. You just come off of World War II, right? The whole world was at war. Spy versus spy, secrets, loose lips, sink ships, all of these, all the posters, everything was about keeping your mouth shut and keeping secrets, right? And you never know who's listening to you. And that was the mindset of not only the United States, but the rest of the world going into the 1950s with nuclear bombs and just the space race and all of where you held secrets. You did not talk, period. And that's it. And so a lot of people that are today in their 80s that went through all of that and were raised that way, they have a huge amount of respect for the country and the way that they were raised. And you're not going to talk somebody or change somebody's mind when they were raised that way. The more that you push them,
yeah, like you said,
yeah,
absolutely.
The more that you push somebody, the more solid their position becomes. You don't get somebody to change their mind.
But it's interesting, though, because there's the converse. I've had a number of people who are very elderly or literally chronically ill. I mean, one guy was in the hospital. It's like, I really need to have someone listen to me. And he found me, and I'm really honored and really touched that he did, because he was a whistleblower for real, talking about reverse engineering ET craft at Edwards Air Force Base, which, of course, is UFO Central.
Yeah, it's right down the street from my house.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, I'll end speaking of that, I'll end it on this. I'll share this with you. I'm out. I'll make the front part. I want your reaction. So I'll make the story short. I have an encounter with the camo dudes out at Edwards, right? And I'm on my Harley. And they come rolling up. I got pictures, and they come rolling up, and they're angry. Guns. It was nuts. So while they're running my ID. One guy's in the Jeep, and I'm out with the other guy who was younger. And I said, so, and I was telling him what I do and stuff. And I said, so, you ever see anything out here? And this is what he says, Preston. He goes, man, we hear the same stories you do. I said, okay. And he goes, I hear about it. We've got flying saucers at Edwards Air Force Base. And he goes, I got to tell you, I want to meet them aliens. I want to see it. And we all talk about it. Have I seen anything? No. Have I heard? Yes. That's what he said to me. Yeah. Yeah. Crazy, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it all depends on what level you're at. Are you in the loop? You know, are you in there in the underground part working on this stuff? Because we know that this is heavily compartmentalized, and people.
I couldn't believe it came out of his. I couldn't believe it came out of his mouth. We
gotta respect that.
Yeah. We've got flying saucers at Edwards. I want to see them. Have I? No, I haven't. We're all talking about it. That's what he said to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing goes on at Wright-Patterson and other places like this. So doesn't surprise me.
Well, when it comes to Edwards and Area 51, both Edwards and Area 51 are testing centers. You don't have squadrons of, fighter jets, and so that's not what they do there. It's a testing and training center, and that's what they do out at Area 51. So I think you have two things going on that are covering up each other. You have UFOs that are covering up advanced aircraft, right? Because they're testing that. And then you have the testing of aircraft that are covering up the reverse engineering. And you know what I mean? And both are running at the same time.
That's interesting. Yeah, well, Edwards had a sighting in, 1945, I think, that J. Allen Hynek was called to look into. It put the base on red alert. It was not us. It changed the way they were handling UFO reports, because at that time they weren't really verified. Was it 47? It was around there.
No, it was 1945. They had two sightings in the same day. And what had happened was one of the pilots landed his plane, and he's walking off the flight line. But he sees something in the sky, and it is a silver craft. And he thought it was a balloon at first, but then he saw that it was traveling against the wind. And a bunch of pilots and ground personnel all came out and watched this thing fly away from them against the wind. And the whole sighting lasted like 20 minutes. Okay. Until it just like, but it went against the wind. Later on that afternoon, it came back.
Yep.
And that was in 1945. And this got written up. The reports were written. They were thinking it was the Russians. Maybe it's the Germans. It's World War II. But yeah, that was 1945. And that's when it was called Muroc Army Airfield. It wasn't the Air Force yet. But that's a pretty famous sighting. Now, of course, you have the Eisenhower stuff and the other things that happened out there. And
you could write a book on Edwards. I nearly did. I put a chapter in my book, UFOs over California, because it's got everything. I mean, there's landings that have taken place there, reverse engineering, tons of sightings.
The best sight, I've had a lot of amazing sightings, but my best sightings and one of my favorite ones, and I can tell you more about this off the air if you want the whole story. But this is what happened. I was staying at a hotel. This is before I got this house. I'm staying at a hotel, meeting my real estate agent here. And so I come out, it was a Saturday night, and I wanted an In-N-Out burger. So I was going to go find an In-N-Out. I didn't know the town at all, right? So anyway, I get in my Jeep, and I was like, oh, man, Edwards is right there. Let's go to Edwards. So I plug that into my navigation, and I drive off. I've never been to Edwards. I don't know where I'm at. I found out now that I know this area so well, I was in the middle of the desert, but I didn't know that. It was at night. So I drive out and I can see Edwards off to my left. I'm heading east and it's lit up and I can see it out there a couple of miles. And I just pull over, park my Jeep, and I walk over and I'm at the fence line with those signs warning restricted area, right? Unlawful this, the deputy or the base commander authorized use of force, all that stuff. But I see the signs and they were in front of me. So I go right up to the tree line, and this is what happens. I have my cell phone in my hand. It's in my right hand, and I'm looking, and it's a black sky. I could see Edwards lit up, thin lights, and then just like this, right above Edwards, this static, like black and white TV static shows up. Wow, what is that? And as I look, this ring of the lights underneath it goes blink, and it goes black and disappears. I was like, holy shit. Wow. Okay. All right. You got my attention now. And I'm standing there, and it was about a minute later. It was like a football shape, the static, like an eye, right? Black. And then I got my phone and I get it ready. And I'm like, oh, this is crazy. Right. And I'm standing there. Nothing. I stood there for like 20 minutes. Nothing. I get in my Jeep and I split. I go and get my burger and I go back to my hotel room. The next day I went out after breakfast in the morning. I'm going to meet my real estate agent. I thought, man, I'm going to go back to Edwards. I want to see, because I was thinking it was something on a pole. Like, you know what I mean? Lights on I don't know what, but I wasn't going UFO. So I drive back out to Edwards. I go right to where I'm following my navigation. I go right to where I could see my tire tracks where I was the night before. I go across there's my footprints, and I'm right there at the fence line. And I look, and you know what? There was nothing above Edwards. There was no, you know what I mean? Radio towers or whatever. There was nothing there. It was just the mountains in the sky. And so I'm looking at Edwards. There's the mountain line. And then right above it would have been where this craft was. And it was just empty sky. Yeah. Yep. Saw that myself. Crazy. And that's when I pulled away, I didn't think the night before, I wasn't thinking UFO. When I drove away that morning, the next day, I was like,
it's unexplained.
Yeah, I saw something. That's it. I don't know. That's Edwards, man. That's what goes on out here in the Mojave Desert.
It's UFO Central. I've got probably 50, 100 stories on Edwards alone.
It's amazing. Preston, where can everybody follow your work?
Well, I'm pretty easy to find on social media. You can find my books on Amazon. I've got a YouTube channel, website, prestondennett.weebly.com. But yeah, would always love it when people reach out, whether it's a question or a comment or a story to share. It's an important subject. The schoolyard one in particular is very dear to my heart. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Preston, you're the absolute very best, my man. I look forward to our next conversation.
Me too. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you, Preston. Preston Dennett, everybody. His links for his website, prestondennett.weebly.com, is in the description box below, over on our website, and we have it on social media. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about, with Chris Jordan, the citizen scientist is you. All of that and much more tomorrow night on Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. But for now, all I've got is Go Backly Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. and cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.